Now inside the Coliseum, walking along one of the interior aisles, and it's kind of like being inside of Moby Dick after he's been beached for about 6 months, and what lies about are fragments of skin and bone in the midst of a huge skeleton. One of the design features that was so outstanding about the Coliseum was its many entryways that allowed for a rapid filling and emptying of the Coliseum. Imagine when these pieces were in their place. Imagine the construction time and the period of construction. If you could have wandered through here and watched craftsmen working, modeling, for example, that column top. Imagine the metalsmith man who made that U-shaped device to hold these two rocks together. Try to imagine as you look at this carving that this may have been the work of one man, and imagine what his thoughts were as he got up in the morning and thought about where he'd left off the day before and how he would continue and what expertise he would put into it, and maybe what variation he would put from one leaf like the one on the left to the one on the right to make it somehow more interesting in his professional mind. Or am I idealizing? Did they just knock this stuff out at the speed of light like automobile workers in the United States might? This is my first kind of open view of the inside of the Coliseum. If you lived back then, you wouldn't have had this view because, as you can see, a lot of the walls from where I'm standing have been knocked down. Imagine the crowds storming in through here, filled with a lust blood that to them would have been perhaps as natural feeling as our going to the next Dirty Harry or Lethal Weapon movie. Is brutality and carnage simply pejorative words? Are those concepts as relative as love, hate, perhaps pain, joy? Here perhaps are the remains of stairs taking people up to the next tier. Presumably columns or statues stood on these pedestals at each entryway. Here's a view that the important people might have had. Maybe not the senators, maybe certainly not the emperor who had his own podium area, but the higher level people. And yet I still may be a little bit too low. They may have been just up on top here. Here we have a little bit of a view down into the hallways that we'll be able to go down into, but in here the lions, the animals, the gladiators were lifts were provided for raising all of those up at different times, just as you see in the movie. Here's some of the detail that would of course been hidden, but certainly these holes were used in some way to lock stones together, although I don't know what this would have been for unless it was just some kind of shaping or maybe weathering of some sort. Here we're climbing up stairs that are most certainly not original, but perhaps the archway is. One can only presume that the people who were going to watch the physical carnage had the strength to get up to their seat to watch it. In various places, archaeologists, I suppose, have stored items that seem related. Here, the items that have some graphics, some wording on them. I don't know what that is. Whether this would be original flooring, I don't know. And I'm not sure what that box would be. Looks like a sarcophagus, but that doesn't make sense here. Well, in a way it doesn't. If it does, it's great irony. Looking at these arches, it may give me a clue to some of the arches seen on these buildings that I've asked myself about. It may be that just structurally, inside a wall's structure, an arch is an additional supporting strategy, as opposed to a covered up old doorway. I was here the second person to go in, so there are very few people here. This is as high as we're allowed to go. And I'll just pan around. I'll do it many times, but just to give you a sense of what's here today. When I was here the last time, there was some construction going on. Now notice I'll raise the camera up a bit because the original walls were rose much higher than where I am at. You can imagine it would have been a rather strenuous climb to the top, but then this was all for free, and what television is to us, this was to them. Actually, what rock concerts are to us today, this was to them. Or football, or probably football's even better example. At least there's the allusion to carnage. Not quite as good as hockey, but here an interesting bit of internal view. Look at the high arch, the high hallway here. Yet elsewhere it drops down to lower arches, still significant. Now I'll start at the same point, only drop down farther so we get deeper into the Coliseum. Looks like some original steps there. Now this part here is what they were working on, and I believe what it is a reconstruction of how the floor might have looked. The floor was actually a wood floor, originally covered with sand to soak up the blood and so forth. Turning around, I'll just pan what I'm able to see. Here, what would have been, I think, an entryway arch. In other words, people, I think, walked up through here, just like we would do in our stadiums, and then walked further on up through here to seats that probably were strung all the way along. What you see there is an angled buttress is what they look like. These rectangular holes, some are filled in and they look original, others are open. There doesn't seem to be a pattern to it. And like down there in the center is a large doorway, yet the niche to the left of it is almost filled in, but not totally. And then to the right of that it's partially filled in, so who knows what that reflects in original construction. Other nuances and detail that I see that I can't explain. That large doorway there. What do those angles of color represent? They're different stone than the brick. Were they the remains of surface decoration? And what of those two horizontal and the one vertical line? Were these just attempts at reconstruction in more recent times using whatever rock happened to be at hand? Now that rock there, I don't know what the support is that's sitting out from it, a brick, but above it, that support right there, I believe was part of the support for the vertical posts or masts that held the huge covering that could be pulled out over the stadium to shelter people from the sun and the rain. Panning down further at the top, can only imagine how much of that is real and not. Probably looking at that movie might be as close an example as we're going to get that I know of. There may be other computer generated, archaeologically based mediums somewhere.